Come on. Terrible. Oh no. Okay. Sorry for the delay. It's been a while since I've done this. So I forget the name of the broadcast. End of the world or something like that. And End of the Evil Empire. The Evil Empire is from Star Wars. And I believe, if I remember correctly, there was a trilogy in the 80s, 70s and 80s. Let's see, Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi, maybe? I forget. And then it went dormant for 30 years, 20 years anyways. And they came out with the next installment. And I don't know if there were 2 or 3 of those Star Wars movies. But the very first one, it was about how the senator of the Republic turned into the evil Sith, and he turned into the emperor. And that was the start of the evil empire. And that's when the split became between the Jedi and the rebels and the empire, which led to the beginning of the series. And in essence, anybody who is awake, anybody who understands history, knows that the United States is the evil empire. It's now obvious. For our country used to have the rhetoric down, and they would talk the talk, and then they would do other things. So they would put a facade, and that facade is quickly dropping. And you can see it. This whole thing with the Ukraine and Russia has really accelerated the fall of the United States. And it goes back to even Great Britain. They're linked to this as well. It isn't always about countries. It's about what they call the powers that be. And so we're watching the end of the system right in front of our eyes. And how that will play out is anybody's guess. Russia and China, I don't think it's part of the club. And so that means they're going to reach a point where they're not going to play by the same rules. And in the past, that has led to wars. And that's what we're seeing this building up to. And there are a couple books that were written over the last 10 years that talks about historical transformations of power, economic and political. And it has reviewed over time all the different empires as they've transitioned. And in many cases, it leads to a war between the existing empire and the up and coming one. And obviously, China is the up and coming. China used to be a world power a long time ago. They were taken down by England and on that part of the world. And so, this could fall apart tomorrow if China and Russia, which they've already said, if you haven't seen the video, I suggest you search for it, where it was a staged conversation, I think. But as Xi Jinping, the leader of China, was leaving the meeting with Putin, going back to his plane to go back to China, they basically were talking and said, yep, we're changing history, first time in 100 years. And I'm sure they were referring to the fact that the United States dollar is coming to the end as a world reserve currency, which became the world reserve currency after World War II with the Bretton Woods Agreement, which happened to be in New Hampshire, up at Mount Washington. So for people in the United States, this is not going to be a good time, even if you're prepared. You are going to see what's kind of tragic is you're seeing a lot of the social decay put in front of us. All these videos of there's a tremendous push right now for divide and conquer between black and white, because you're seeing a lot of these videos with blacks beating up whites, and I think that's staged to create divide and conquer. I'm not saying that it's not real, but I think it's being promoted to accelerate the divide and conquer. So, but tomorrow night, Dan and I are going to have a live stream. And so I just wanted to come on and do a little pre-live broadcast promotion. And I went this route because I wasn't sure I remembered how to do this. I haven't done one of these in a while. So if anybody wants to, I'll stay on for 5 or 10 minutes, see if anybody comes on. I put the link to the live stream in the comments. So you can click on that link and it will bring you on. Just make sure that what's going on here. I'll just interject. Last Sunday, when the markets opened in China, they open at 6 p.m. Eastern time, which is 12, 13-hour time difference with China, depending on the time of year. And gold, a few hours after the markets opened, gold went to over $2,000 an ounce, which was quickly pushed down. It was not talked about in the United States media at all. It wasn't talked about online either. And then we had some bank issues last weekend. Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, and there are a couple other banks now. Deutsche Bank looks like it's having some major issues. I'm hearing that Charles Schwab is teetering because of their mortgage exposure. That would be tragic because a lot of people have their funds tied up there. Schwab is like a Fidelity, Robin Hood. And so gold yesterday, see, today's Friday. Let's say, okay, so Wednesday. Wednesday is when the Fed came out and spoke. Yellen also spoke, which wasn't announced and wasn't broadcast. So while people were watching Powell, which is like watching paint dry, they're falling asleep. Yellen was saying that the government is not going to guarantee backing deposits in banks over the $250,000 amount, which is different what, well, they promised to back Silicon Valley Bank. They didn't, so, yeah. So after Powell and then Yellen spoke, gold went on a tear. I believe it went up $50 or $60 that day, went over $2,000. Immediately was pushed down. What's kind of funny is the powers that be, for whatever reason, Ukraine is the line in the sand, and the $2,000 gold price is the line in the sand. And it seems like they're pulling out all the stops, spending whatever they can to keep those things from falling apart. Now, as more and more banks start to fail, a lot of people say it's not systemic. I think it is systemic. I think it's like a dominoes. And there's so much debt in the world, that it is going to be contagious. And when one goes, down they go. And it's like that game Jenga, where banks are on sale. Well, if you had taken that approach, now I don't know if you're talking about MS buying their stock, but you know, all the people in Silicon Valley Bank They were wiped out. And Credit Suisse, all the bondholders were wiped out, $17 billion. I don't know about the stockholders, but what they get? Their stock was worth $100, $200, whatever it was a year ago. Went down to 59 cents. It's pretty close to zero. The people who have owned the banks have lost. Now, could the banks come back? Yeah, anything's possible. But this is what I'm talking about. This is the end of a system. This is the end of a system. The United States dollar was originally backed by gold, and they made gold illegal for you and I to hold, or our grandparents to hold. It was illegal for 50 years, 40, 50 years. It was illegal for people in the United States to own gold. So how free is the country if you can't even hold it? So what that did is 2 generations grew up in the United States not understanding that gold is money, has been money for 5,000 years. Gold has been money. People laugh at gold. What do you need those shiny rocks for? Well, it's what people have used for a long, long time to protect themselves against government, against banksters, against people from stealing their wealth. It was something they could hold in their hand. And what was will be again. As the Bible says, there's nothing new under the sun. And so if you do not own gold or silver, if you have your money just in a bank, well, you could get a surprise, a big surprise. And I've been sending out to my family and friends, I've been sending out a bunch of information. And I strongly encourage you watch Peak Prosperity, go to their website. They have something called The Lesson on Compounding, Chapter 2. If you search online for Peak Prosperity Compounding, Chapter 2, watch that video, read it. It's excellent. It talks about how quickly water fills up into Yankee Stadium. And what it's driving home is how quickly things can fall apart. Okay? Things can fall apart very quickly. What is this? So, yeah, well, yeah, I'm not one of the elite, so, you know, I'm sure that they'll gladly take my money. But now I forget what I was saying. Oh, compounding. So the group I belong to a financial group with Greg at Silver Liberties. I've had him on several videos. Right, I'll see if I can get him on tomorrow as well. But it's probably going to happen because there's nothing you can do on the weekend. And we'll come out probably release news when we're all asleep. And a new world. And the dollar, new dollar. Jim Willie calls it the Scheiss dollar in German. He's got a whole diatribe on it. That's how I first came across Jim Willie. I think that he hit the nail on the head pretty close to what's going to happen. Is the United States has 2 choices right now. Will have 2 choices. They can, because we have the US dollar, they can print as much money as they want. If they owe somebody $1 trillion, they can just go, boom, there's $1 trillion. Now, for bread, but they paid you back your $1 trillion. You got it back. It's not worth anything, but you got it back. or they can default. They can say, sorry, we don't have it, we're not going to pay it, and that will affect the currency in a different way. And anybody who's gone through a bankruptcy, I don't think it's a pleasant experience. I know people who have gone through it. Our last president went through it, and he survived. And it allows you to reorganize. And I think that's, but our country is, I can tell you, I've been around a little while, and I can tell you that our country today is it's a shadow of what it used to pretend to be. And I'm not saying it was anything great, because if you read history, if you read Smedley Butler, War is a Racket, right? If you read Smedley Butler 100 years ago, listen to some Carlin stuff. It's amazing. And people in the audience are laughing. Oh, it's so funny. But they don't think that, he's trying to give you a message. And if you look at what we've done to Julian Assange, I can't believe that people haven't risen up and demanded that this man is released from prison. And on Twitter, I don't remember the name of the guy's channel, but he talks a lot about Civil War history, specifically Confederate Civil War history. And he was talking about a battle where all these guys knew they were going into the battle, that they weren't probably coming out. I think they had 100% casualties. And those men back then, they were able to stand up and do what they thought was right and sacrifice themselves for a greater good. And I don't think our country's capable of that. I think we just do what we're blindly told today. Our country was not founded on hiding behind a king or an emperor or a tyrant or a president. It was founded on free people with individual human rights and free will. And freedom is scary stuff. A lot of things go wrong with true freedom. But unfortunately, I think we, over the last 50 years that I've been alive, our country's been dominated by fear. All people have to do is say, we got to take these guys out. They're threatening our way of life. And people buy it. So, long story short, this could be the weekend. I don't know if it is, but Deutsche Bank is on the brinks. Our government, Treasury Yellen, the Hobbit, she is having meetings discussing what our government is going to do in the banks if Deutsche Bank fails or needs a bailout by the ECB. And then there's a bunch of banks in the US that they are not who they are, that are at risk. So, all right, that's all I'm going to get into tonight. So, what's this? This is all unreal. We haven't been free for so long. We point out the big log in everyone else's eyes, but yeah. Well, it's I think one thing I've tried never to be in my life is a hypocrite. a hypocrite. I never tried to hold somebody to a standard that I wasn't willing to meet, whether it was with people or anything, my friends, family. I will hold somebody to a standard that I wasn't willing to follow and stand up for. And I think unfortunately it's going to require that we kill a lot of people, because they're not going to willingly give up their power. The people who are in power now are never going to willingly give it up. The people who are in government now, whether it's state, local, federal, go to your city council, your town council, go to your state legislature. They are all people who get involved in politics so that they can create laws to provide monopolies for their business, or they get some sort of kickbacks, or that's what it's all about today. It's about creating an advantage for themselves. There is no such thing as fiduciary responsibility, and where people do what is right for the country, even if it means it's not in their best interest. And is that possible? Yeah, I truly believe that that is possible. I believe that there are people out there who believe in duty and honor. And especially, you hear people say, do it for the children, do it for the children, But unfortunately, that means today to accept taxes, to accept laws that are crap, but they want you to swallow it, even though they know it's a joke. So instead of arguing on the merits, they get you to react viscerally, which means emotionally. And once they get you reacting emotionally, they've won. You're gone. You're toast. And that's what our country doesn't do. You read stories about Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Sam Adams, George Washington. They were real people, just like you and me. I mean, they weren't mysterious, fictional characters. They were real. And they had emotions. And even though the Revolutionary War was fought by a very small percentage of the population, the people who organized it and ran it, you'll hear people criticize them now. They're tearing down statues around the country and erasing history because they consider these people racists, or whatever word you want to fill in. Well, those guys put heads in a noose and hung if they had been unsuccessful. Not like they weren't risking. They could have stayed in the English system and made a lot of money and stayed on top of aristocracy of the time, but they didn't. They said, we want freedom. People back then, they had common sense. They were very smart people. They read classics, they read the Bible, they understood history. Today, you ask, what is 3 times 3? 9. That's how smart we have people today. People who knew Ukraine, or, and they point to Alaska on a map. I mean, it's just stupidity. I like to say, our citizens today have the most degrees ever in history But for the most society, well, it's been this way for a long time. And it's been this way for a long time. It goes back 100 years ago with the creation of the Federal Reserve, when they created the IRS the same year as the Federal Reserve. Coincidence? No. It got us into the League of Nations, which eventually became the United Nations. World War I, World War II. Took us off the gold standard. And 9/11 was the coup de grace. That's when they realized that the people of this country were so stupid they could do anything. And they've been doing, now they come out and say what they're going to do because they know you're not going to do anything about it. So, but we'll get into this more tomorrow. Hopefully I'll have a couple people on tomorrow to discuss this. Yeah, Freemasons. I don't dig into obviously the Freemasons are real. And as far as groups over time, if you know the story of how the Rothschilds really accumulated the wealth, it's only natural that, okay, how do we put this? If you organized a group 200, 500, 800, 1,000 years ago, you're probably going to include your family and your friends and the group. That's who you're going to rely on. And then over time, this group compiles a book, a list of all the things that work or don't work. And over that amount of time, imagine if we were the Highlander, we had been alive 1,000 years. Imagine how much you would have learned, how much you would know over time, just from living, just from experience. Human emotions don't change. When I take my walks through graveyards and I look at these people, guy's been dead 300 years, been dead longer than he was alive, but he had the same emotions as you and me. A lot of the same emotions. He would pray to God, asking for help, forgiveness, had arguments with people, he loved, died, right? Like us all. And so if this group was able to organize all of this information, how powerful would that group be over time? They would learn how markets work. They would be able to manipulate these markets. They would be able to get in and out. They'd be able to control almost anything over time. And that's basically what a lot of groups have done. And it could be tied to religion, could be tied to Freemasons, could be tied to, obviously, banks. And it goes across countries. These groups, and these groups are more important than their countries. Their loyalty, their allegiance is to each other, not to a flag. If you look at how maps have changed over the years, countries come and countries go. Even just the last 100 years, it's amazing how many countries have come and gone. But those groups stay. Those groups stay. And that's what we're watching now. So those groups, they've seen this. Maybe the people who are running those groups now weren't alive, but the people who have compiled, and now with computers, imagine how efficient their organization is now that everything's computerized. And they probably have the top AI predictor models. So they know what's going to happen before it happens. And now you're seeing videos where now they can create videos where they could put out a video of us or a president or something, and it will sound like them, it will look like them, and and it will be software, program software. And that is some scary stuff, because now you're believing your eyes. It's like if you're a and you get disoriented. This happened to JFK Jr. when he crashed. He thought he was in a nosedive, and he thought he was going up. So he was inverted. He was upside down. So he tried to pull himself up, and by pulling himself up, he went right into the ground. For those of you who don't believe he's dead, I mean, who believe, there's a group out there who believe that JFK Jr. is alive. I'm not one of them, but there is a group. I think the poor guy just made a tragic mistake. And that's what happens is when we rely on our feelings or our emotions, that's usually when we make mistakes, a lot of times. So these groups over time have created rules, procedures, steps that are followed. And they follow them. Take all the emotion out of it. And these people get their kids involved when they grow up and they take over. It is a form of royalty in a way, an unknown royalty. And they do rule the world. They do rule the world. You don't really think Biden's in charge, do you? Or Trump, or any of them? No. Okay. Yeah, MS, nothing brings people together like a war and a bank run. And yeah, that's exactly how they do it. It's the Hegelian dialectic. Problem, reaction, solution. They create a problem. They get a reaction, usually fear. They love fear. They'll tell you, don't let a crisis go to waste. And then they provide a solution, like the Patriot Act and the NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, which are things that if they had said in the year 2000, if they had come out and said, yeah, we're going to pass the Patriot Act and we're going to pass the National Defense Authorization Act, where we can black bag you and you have no rights. We could just pick you up and people are like, where's Dave? Dave who? Dave's gone. Like they've done to Assange, right? Or people just in Gitmo, no right, no trials, nothing. They can do that to any one of us. All they have to do is say you're a terrorist. That's why they like to come out and say, well, we think this might be a domestic terrorist. So that is how they do it. Now there's supposedly they're going to come out with aliens next. And that will unite the whole world against aliens. And we have to create, oh, it's so ridiculous. And now we have people where they'll get the chip in their hand because it makes things easier. And if you do not, if the last 3 years have not proven that it's all one big charade and one big psyop, like somebody in here was saying, then you really need to do your homework. Or if you don't care, if you just, hey, But the thing is, we all die. So if you believe in God, if you believe in salvation, well, that's all that matters. Whether you're 30, 50, 70, 100 years old, we all leave this earth. So. Well, everybody have a great night. That's all I have to say. And but if it does happen, there are some things you can do. I have a video on my channel, first time buying precious metals, gold and silver. If you've never bought gold or silver before, watch it. If you have any questions, you can email, leave messages. You should have something, whether it is the US dollar, the Mexican peso, the Russian ruble, Chinese yuan, British pound. Silver, gold can translate to any of those. Okay, you should have some cash on hand. So in case banks and credit cards and debit cards go down, you can pay something while stores still have goods. If this does happen, if these banks do start going, if news comes out, Deutsche Bank is going down, go out and get gas in your car and get food, get things while you can buy them in the stores. Because typically what happens when the credit shuts down, all the supermarkets are just in time. I'm sure you've seen it before during the pandemic where all of a sudden, hey, why are there no eggs on the shelf? Hey, where's the butter? Hey, where's this? It's gonna, when the trucks stop rolling, your local supermarket runs out of stuff very quickly, very quickly. When Russia collapsed, after what they found out is one of the things that was worth its weight in gold was ammonium, because the water stopped working properly and people were drinking water, getting diarrhea, and they had to get ammonium. Otherwise, if you have dysentery can kill you. So you had to get rid, so ammonium, over-the-counter medicines, cigarettes, booze, all these things that people will want, you can barter for. I know it sounds insane. Sounds absolutely insane, but you have the space. There's no harm in putting something into storage that doesn't go bad. So those are things that are going to be as valuable as gold and silver. And gold and silver, while it may not trade, what it does is whatever replaces the dollar, or even if it is a new dollar, it's going to, instead of, let's say they come out and they say, hey, you have $100,000 in the bank. Well, the shiny dollar, the new dollar, now 20 of the old dollars. Okay, so your $100,000, okay, is now $5,000. But it's still going to buy the same thing. You'll still be able to buy a coffee for $5 or $2, whatever, wherever you go, whether you go to McDonald's or you go to Starbucks. But now you only have $5,000 when you used to have $100,000. But that ounce of silver that's worth $30 right now, $25, $30, whatever it is, will still be worth $25, $30, $40 in the new system. The ammonium, that will still be worth. So things that people actually need will transfer. And if you haven't really thought about this, think about it. So peace. Have a great night. Take care. So tomorrow at I think 5 p.m. Eastern is when Dan wants to come on. So, bye.